number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up? Welcome to episode 302 of Sports Card Nation. Happy to be back, and also happy to be back with part two and the conclusion of our great conversation with Brian Kappel, who wrote the book R.E. Leaf, Relief. Great book. We talked about it some last week. We're going to revisit it as well this week, and some hobby stuff. It's not all 100% book, but great book. Brian did his super due diligence and again solved what I believe are some 1948/49 Leaf mysteries. Read the book and you'll know, or listen to part two and part one of the interview, and you'll know what we're talking about. Quick 30-second break, and we'll be on with Brian Kappel.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Here is the conclusion of our interview with Brian Kappel. Since the books come out, and have is there anyone that will, like I said, I was a 48 Leaf guy, and I can't really argue this, assuming it's the truth, which we have to in a court of law, right? Is anyone still sort of like have you had any like feedback, like, hey, it's still 48 Leaf to me, or that, or have you had? I guess my question is, are more people like me and like, great work, Brian? I'll now recognize it's 49 Leaf. I think you solved the mystery, or do you have some, stubborn people, if you will, that like, I don't care what the court document says?
Yeah, so I think it's a mishmash, right? It's a little bit of both, because I think to a certain degree, well, how about this on the grading side? I don't think it'll ever happen. I think that either SGC or Beckett has started putting 49 on there if the copyright is 49. So that's kind of a win, but not really. I think the
here so here's an SGC. This is my Jackie. This is my Grail.
There you go.
And it's 48, 49 on here. So they're covering their butts. They're covering their bases. Yeah. But
so I think you're going to see that, because again, with the copyrights on there, and what's fascinating is when you dig into 49 cards, right, that were basically on a printing plate on the sheet that they would produce, it was an even split for short prints and the main printing of how many had 48 and how many had 49 copyrights. So, again, the as I dug in, there was all the stuff that was living on the boards ahead of time, basically saying, hey, look at the backs of the cards. There's things that are happening on here that are in November, that are in December, that they're acknowledging on the cards. And that's trades. That's when the MVP awards went out and everything like that. And you look at the runway that would be left for distributing cards that would go out. The problem comes is that those cards that would go out with a 1948, they never packaged short prints with the main print cards. So you wouldn't just send out 1948 cards. You would have to send out everything that was on that sheet, and there's an even split of 48 and 49. So it's just, the more you kind of dig into it, it makes sense, right? Where you're just like, okay, these obviously came out in 49. And I think the problem is work happened in 48. And I think that's why you see a lot of those cards in 48, have the copyright of 1948 on them. The things that I think are interesting is like, Hal Newhouser, which is a short print rookie card, super difficult to find, has a 1948 copyright, and it has two versions. And so that's where I kind of jump into the whole idea of the salesman samples. I think in 48, they probably produced a sheet of salesman samples. And I think a lot of them look exactly like the main run of the cards. And that's for football, boxing, all that stuff. But you get the outliers. There's there's the Hal Newhouser. There's the Marciano that is numbered to 50, but never, I think there's only 6 that are known to exist. And then there's Joe
For
Louis.
those that are scoring at home, if that's the case, that's less than the Honus Wagner D.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is
That's-
you start digging into populations on some of those things, and you're just like,
Yeah.
and the thing that I missed, and I'm kicking myself to this day, but there's a picture of it in the book, is there was a Joe Louis with a blue background that hit. And that's not the main issue that came out. It went to a white background with a red border around. And so I think that because there was work going on in 48, I think the industry, the hobby, most people will refer to them as 1948 cards because there is that copyright on there. I don't think it's a distribution date. Now, the pushback from the grading companies is you're going to get a lot of people that are going to be, pretty mad about the fact that their Jackie Robinson now isn't a 48 card, it's a 49 card, and it's not a true rookie card because it came out in 49, not 48. Fact of the matter is, Leaf still hit the marketplace before Bauman did. That's why Bauman sued him. So it's like, you can dig into it and be like, well, it kind of still is.
I still love my Jackie card.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great card. And I think that's the thing is as people say, and one that I live by is the whole, buy the card, not the grade. I think that's the thing is buy the card, not the story behind it too. I mean, if it's right in the range, there weren't many cards outside of regional issues that hit from that 47 to 48 time frame for a Jackie. So it's like, you've got two great cards that you can pick from in 49, the Bauman and the Leaf. And I think they're both, they both look fantastic and they're both, great cards. So I think it's very, I think people are open to calling them 49 Leaf cards, but I think that you have to kind of walk through all the stuff behind it because it's so cemented in the industry the way that it is right now that people are a little slow to kind of accept it type thing.
It'll be interesting to see, like, to me, if I'm one of the grading companies and I get word of this and I read the book or I see the court document, I think from now on, you almost have to label them as 49 Leaf. Now, like you said, whether they do that or not. And I don't think, I know the fear for grading card companies, now we got to reholder all the ones prior that maybe have the wrong flip, so to speak. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. I think just going forward, you just grade them as 1940. It doesn't change the card, like you said, in the holder. It's not a different set. It's just now it's come to light that, if someone wants it reholdered, it costs $12-15. They can foot that bill if it bothers them enough where they want to flip to illustrate actuality, right? But other than that, I think the grading card companies from this point forward, let's say, could just put them in there as 1949 Leafs. And anyone else that has, like mine, that says 48, 49, if it doesn't bother me, but if it did, and I wanted to pony up $15 and just get a new holder, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I don't either. And I think that's what, the argument that I kind of make in there and have made to PSA about it is, there was a change that happened on the fly for T206 cards. When PSA started grading T206 cards, that's all they put on the label was T206. And then there was this kind of outcry for, well, we want what's the back? Okay, so now we're going to put Piedmont, we're going to put Sweet Caporal, we're going to put, Polar Bear on the back of it. Though. Well, what about the factories? So it's like all these, and in me, at least to me, it's like the evolution of grading is the finding of knowledge and being able to get more finite in exactly what it is. Because if their purpose is to be like the holder of all the information in order to accurately grade a card and depict it in a way that it's like, okay, this is a red portrait Ty Cobb, but it's a factory 25 Sweet Caporal, so it's actually worth more than, or you got a factory 42 Piedmont or something like that. And I think that what that shows me and is what I would be paying for the service for is they're the bank of knowledge, that it's like they know all these little things that take these two cards that are almost exactly the same, and you get down into the finite details and like, okay, but this one's actually more because it's rarer than this one is here. And so that's why it's been a little, I don't know, funny, shocking. I don't know. Like, I guess whatever it is that PSA has pushed back so hard on it that they just kind of devalue it whenever I reach out to them and just kind of say, oh yeah, we know about the color variations. I'm like, not talking about those. Just something else. In fact, you guys are already doing it. Look at Kent Peterson.
I don't want to speak for him, Brian, or I'm not defending them. I just almost think they don't want to get in the middle. I don't want to say controversy, but into like a debate. And if I think if they took a stance, there's collectors out there that don't recognize it and that would argue against them. So I almost think they're like want to be a wallflower. They just want to stay against the wall and let whatever happen in front of them. I think it's more to that.
Jim Beckett said the same thing. Basically, he's like, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to be pretty miffed that oh, I bought this card, but you're saying that there's one that's worth more. Well, then I would have bought that. Now it's been misrepresented and all this kind of stuff. Instead of it being like this rolling evolution of it, it's like, so I think if anything, it's probably going to be, and it has been, because I've done a couple different shows. Like I was down in Nashville in July and just talking with people about it. And it was fascinating watching people, come day one, read the book, come back day two with the reference section that's in the middle and go jumping into everybody's value bins and then running over to my table going, did I get a late printing? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, this is what and all this kind of stuff. So I think that if nothing else, if someone who's interested in the set all of a sudden has a new look or a fresh look at it and says, wow, there's actually more to this. There's another layer of collecting that I can go after in this. Then I've done my job, because I mean, that's what I enjoy doing, is going through and picking things out. And what's funny is about 2 years ago in Strongsville, Ohio, I went to the vintage show there, which is just a great show.
Yeah.
And this was, mid all of the research and everything like this. So it was like my dad and I were well versed in all the little things that were going on with the cards. And so we were kind of looking out for stuff. And I picked up a Gerald Pretty card. And I kind of, pulled it out of the value bin, looked it over at my dad. And I'm like, missing the blue. Because on that card, he's got a band of green that goes in back of him. And he's like, oh, $12. Perfect. Pick it up. So randomly, as I'm sitting there, as I do, one night, I'm like, well, if there's one of them, that means there's four of them, because that's the way the cards were printed. Because someone had sent me a picture of a DiMaggio that was missing the black plate from a show that he was, I think it was Chantilly. And he's like, is this one of one? And I'm like, no, technically it's one of four, because there's four printed on each sheet. So if the black had run out, which happened often, that means there's four DiMaggios that look exactly like that. And so I was like, well, it would be kind of fun to track down the other four or other three Gerald Pretty cards. So I went on eBay, because that's what you do. And to my surprise, there was 6 of them on eBay. So I'm like, all right, so that means 2 sheets went through with no blue ink, and there's 6 of these that were produced. The funny thing about it is that the lowest price on one of those cards was $1,200. The highest price was $5,000. I had got mine for $12. And they called it the non-green band variation. So, but what it was is the fact that the blue ink had run out.
That was one of my next questions too, Brian. Are dealers pricing some of these variations in that know about them? Are they pricing them according? Are they or not necessarily?
I haven't seen anybody kind of lean in on it. And every time that I kind of talk to a dealer, they're like, yeah, that's nice. So I don't think anyone has come around to seeing that, hey, I've got 5 Jackies, and of the 5, I've got one that's got a true blue, no detail hat and 2 yellow bars that come down on the sides. And that one should be about 30% higher than anything else that kind of lives in that grade level. So I don't think that information is hit or been readily accepted yet at that kind of dealer level yet. And I think there's, for people who are interested in the set and like digging and hunting for stuff, I think there's a lot of things that are out there that are a lot of fun to go grab.
Yeah, a little treasure hunt now in there. It may eventually happen, though.
It may. It could very well. It's interesting, especially going on eBay and putting in, a player like Johnny Hopp and just seeing how many of those kind of pop up and have a black hat, and then how many of them have a blue hat. That's all it is. You can see the early printings, and you can see the late printings. And like you said, it's about a 30% difference.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
Sports Card Nation has returned.
Now you've made this set. Are you have you completed, or are you in the process? Like, are you trying to get like a master set with all the color
Oh no.
variations? Is that
There's a bunch of guys out there that do try and get every representation of all the colors. I'm not that. I'm very happy. I finished the set. I finished it in my way, right? I'm not I need a PSA 8 or I'm not happy, or a PSA 5. I'm like, if it's in the door, I'm good. So when I was going through and getting down towards the end of it, I kept on making the joke to people. I'm like, I just need a corner of a satchel page and I'll be happy. In the ultimate irony, the card that I ended up getting, which was on like the last page of a Heritage Sunday sale that just was hanging out there with no bids on it, had all the borders cut off. And so I was looking for a corner of a satchel and got a satchel with no corners. So, it was just, but it's in the house. So it's, and I got it for a very reasonable amount. And so it's, my set came together in a very cost-effective way, because I was more happy just to have the cards than to, get the most pristine one out there.
But that being said, like you said, if you're at a show and you see something and it's reasonable, you'll add it to.
Oh yeah, I've got I have the proverbial shoebox of the oddities and stuff like that. I love, after going through writing the book, knowing the process, learning the process, all that kind of stuff. And it kind of immersing in. I'm a full-on Leaf junkie now, where it's like, if I see something that's off registration in a really weird way, I buy it in a heartbeat. If I see something that's got a missing back, buy it. If I see something that has I've got was it Choo Choo Justice from the football set? I've got one that has no black ink on the front, so it's just a ghosted image on there. And I love it. I think it's fantastic, because again, knowing the backstory behind it makes it that much more fun to kind of dig in and find things. And so it's like the George Vico card is one that I talk about in the book. And so whenever I find those, because he does have a late print version where basically the blue of his background bleeds into his hat, I buy those all the time and I give them away as presents to people, because I'm just like, it's just such I think it's a dynamic looking card anyway. But whenever I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll buy them. So.
Yeah, it's even but outside, like you said, even outside the baseball set, there's so many backstories and storylines and whatnot. And the Leaf cards, I know they're not going to win design awards, but they, at the time, colored cards were not common. Hence the 48 Bowman. So while they had some errors and they couldn't get maybe color consistency right, Brian, they still were attractive in the fact that, hey, look, we have color on our trading cards here now.
Absolutely.
I think that was some of the allure, especially with kids at the time, right? And so we got a hats off for that, regardless of some of the mistakes that followed or some of the unscrupulous stuff, to skip numbering. It was, the Lee family was innovative in many ways, and so we got to kind of give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's funny looking at their full assortment. Like you said before, you said it was kind of a tchotchke, and it very much was. I mean, looking at when I was at the Chicago History Museum, a lot of the effects that were in that estate were just, sales catalogs, and the stuff that they would put in with things was just, it was funny to me. But looking back at it in 1948, I don't know that many people were doing that, doing the plastic pumpkins at Halloween and crazy stuff for Christmas and all this kind of stuff. But again, it's like, it was another gimmick for, and I'm going to go through and this is how we're going to sell the candy.
Yeah. And they did. They sold quite a bit of candy. So, hats off. They knew what they were doing in some respect. Talk about the process of writing the book. Like, how long did it take you start to finish?
It was probably about a 2-year process. And I'm self-employed. I've got my own business. And so this became my, basically like the 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. thing, is that there was days that I would come down and I would just write. If I had found something, I would, try and, blow it out and stuff like that. If I was trying to build context of what was going on in the country at the time, then I'd focus on that. And, was able to go through, my sister, who's a college professor, she kind of helped me outline, okay, let's try and get some kind of flow in what we're doing here. And so once I had that outline, then I was basically just working against that. Once I got the preliminary writing done, I kind of passed it off to a friend who was an editor, and then started passing it around to, my kids, my wife, everybody else who was, willing to read it type thing. And got some great feedback there. And then I started working on the kind of visual elements. Cause again, since I do design, it's like, if this was going to be the only book that I was going to do, I was going to go for broke, and I was going to design every single element of it down to the little cartoons on the chapters and stuff like that. And so it's like, all right, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to do this whole thing up. So, there was a shift when it was out editing that I was going through and trying to get the look of everything together and trying to get all the images together. And then when we kind of put everything together, that's when my dad and my sister kind of hit me with you got to reference all those pictures, and you got you got to cite this, and you got to. I'm like, oh God, So it was. It took about 2 years, and it was ready to go at the end of April this year. We launched it on May 6th, and it's been great, and it's been selling online really well. And then I go out and I try and do shows whenever I can. If we're out traveling and stuff like that, I'll set up a table and usually sell between 10, 15 books every time that I go to someplace. But it's really more about the conversations that I kind of have in between, which has been great. And I think that to me has been kind of the gold is because I'm not retiring off what I'm making off the book. That's for darn sure. But I've really enjoyed connecting with collectors and kind of just talking shop with a set that I'm passionate about, and kind of leaning in on other people's passions about the set as well.
Yeah, well, it's let me ask you this before I talk a little bit about the little plug for the book. I mean, now you're an author now. Is there another book? Is there another book in the pipeline? Like,
yes and no. So it's interesting because I think we're probably going to take a sidestep from, and I say we because again, my dad's kind of my partner in crime when it comes to just, me getting up in the morning and bouncing crazy ideas off somebody. He's usually the first one I call. I've been enamored with the 1940 Superman issues. So we might take a jump into non-sport, though I'm having a little bit of a difficult time figuring out the licensing that would go into writing that book right now. Just because, it's such a behemoth, and trying to get any kind of licensing or permissions from Warner Brothers DC is proving to be a little bit on the difficult side. But again, I think the interest there is the fact that, Gum Card Inc. becomes Bauman. So it's like you start, another thread gets tied to a story, so it's start
connecting the dots.
These interesting stories that kind of run across the board. So we might do that, or there are a couple other things that we think are kind of interesting. So there might be another book that kind of comes in line with collecting. We want to try and run this one out because we're actively kind of in the Superman weeds right now. And that one's just a fun one. Tragic story on the rights of Superman, but the card representations through the years are just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, well, R.E. Leaf, excellent read. I'm holding it up again. And like you the design element, I mean, look at the back. It's the wrapper and plenty of photos to illustrate a lot of the thoughts and facts that are in here. Even the cover has a feel to it too. Kudos on that. But listen, you don't even have to necessarily be a fan of Leaf or the whole, dilemma of 48, 49. It's an interesting hobby book for anyone that loves hobby history, which I do. But then for me, the whole Jackie tie-in, my Grail card, and just being in content creation, right? You always have the debates what year it is. And like I said, I was always a 48 guy, Brian. I think now I have to be honest. While it may have it starts in 48 as far as on the blueprint, the production was 49. I think the book kind of solves that mystery. Sometimes we watch these shows, right, where they're going to claim to solve the mystery, and then you watch the show, and at the end you're still in the same place. I think this book is a little bit. Not a little. I think it's different because now we have, in this case, court documentation, testimony to when the first truck, not only the date the first truck rode, but where it went to, which was Boston. So we have details that have never been known before, or at least discussed on that level. And so some of these ends are kind of tied off now. And so, and I don't think, for me, saying it's 49 doesn't change my perception of the cards. It's just a year, it's 1 year to be exact. So Really less if you look at it on a calendar, probably.
Yeah.
But but it's your dedication and research and that we can have this. I'll say finale, and at least on some of these questions, I think we've got answers now, and I think that's important, right? I think as a country we care about history. I think as a hobby, some of us care about history.
Right.
Some may not, but those that do, I think we have some answers now, and I think that's important, and it's due to your diligence and getting in there and getting in the mud and getting dirty and finding all these things, right? It just amazes me that it took 70 something years to really get some answers, and we've had some big name hobbyists that but you did it. So again, great job by you. It's an excellent book. I always give the guests the final word, where people can find you, what you're doing, social media, where they can get the book. I'll take your time, give all that stuff out.
Yeah, the book is available on Amazon. If you search Relief, it's on Amazon, and you can also go through reliefbook.com. It's available there. And then on Instagram, I think it's _leaf book. And so I'm there. And then if you don't find it there, you can always go through Space Monkey Designs, which is my design company as well.
Well, awesome stuff. I think we broke some news that there might be another book in the works at some point there. So, and knowing how this book turned out, I'm sure it'll be, I was a comic book kid. I'm not a comic book guy, but I'm sure you'll do it justice, and it'll be a great book as well. Brian, thanks again for making some time. Thank you for not only coming on the show, but doing all that due diligence and getting some answers, some hobby questions that at times we probably wondered if we'd ever get a definitive answer, and yet here we are.
Yeah, John, thanks for the opportunity to come on and talk about it. Like I said, this has been a passion project for 2 years, and it's great to see people reacting to it and being open to talk about it. And I look forward to kind of keep on moving forward, and I'll let you know any books that are going to drop before they do.
Well, maybe a Relief part 2, as maybe some more. Maybe this stirs up some other stuff, and
it could very well. I mean, you never know when the information is going to come, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about the premiums or the boxing or the salesman samples and stuff like that, but it's all in the book.
Yeah. That I don't want to give everything away.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Don't want to spoil it all.
So. Well, again, thanks, Brian. Get the book. It's a great read. Believe me, I'm not a huge reader, and I tore through this pretty quickly. So there you go.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks again to Brian Kappel for sharing some of the insights and behind the scenes of putting this great book together. And even though we talked about the details, a lot of other stuff in that book, from illustrations, explanations. So plenty more nuggets in that book. Go out and get it. It's Relief, Leaf, and 121 pages. Won't take you super long, but you'll be so much more knowledgeable, not only about the 1949 Leaf set, but the hobby as well. It's a great book.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
This is your pal Val from NASCAR Radio. Never forget, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and at Hobby News Daily on social. Happy collecting!
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.